go over some problems for you to study for your quiz for tomorrow. So these all come from your homework or your lessons that we did it in class, or you're due now. So the first one I'm going to do, we're going to review order of operations. Okay, so I'll zoom in on here. If it lets me. There you go. And the first one that we'll do is this problem. This was in lesson number 1, and it was part of your exit ticket, so I don't think any of you had to correct it. So for order of operations, remember we go with the highest mathematical order, which is grouping, and then we do the next mathematical order, which is exponents and radicals, then multiplication and division, then addition, subtraction. So you like to use a mnemonic of GEMDAS to remember how to use operations. You can. In order of operations, you go from highest to lowest, okay, and the mathematical order. So from here, I notice that I have an exponent, and then I have a multiplication, and then I have an addition. Okay, so I'm going to do the exponent first, then I'm going to multiply, and then I'm going to add. So I'll do the exponent first, and I'm going to show every step. Oops, it's a plus. 3 squared means 3 times 3, so that's 9. And then times 6, then I'm going to do the multiplication. So this is the multiplication. 1 plus 9 times 6 is 54. And then finally I'll do the addition. 1 plus 54 is 55. So that will be my answer. Let's do another order of operations problem. This one would be 45 divided by 5 minus 4 in parentheses here, and then minus 10. So again, if the mnemonic of GEMDAS helps you remember the order of operations from highest to lowest mathematical order, you can write it down. Over here we have a grouping, okay? Inside the grouping, more things are going on. So when that happens inside the grouping, we also use order of operations within the grouping. So within the grouping, I have another grouping, which is the parentheses. So that will be that right here. And then I have a subtraction. So in the order of operations, I would do first the grouping and do it, and then the subtraction. So within this bracket, okay, I'm going to do the grouping inside, which is 5 minus 4, and that's going to be 1. Bring everything down. This is still there. I still have to undo this grouping right here, okay, and bring everything else down. 1 minus 10 is going to be negative 9. And then finally, I'll do the division. Okay, 45 divided by negative 9 will be negative 5. Okay, so that's just a little bit of practice in order of operations, which is the first thing that we did here at the beginning of the year. Now I'm going to move over to equation solving, okay? So we did 1-step equations, 2-step equations, just to review from last year, but the ones that we really are focusing on are equations multi-step, where the equations have variables on both sides. Okay, so over here, I'm going to write a simple one, and then we'll go from there. So we'll have 4n minus 6 minus 2n equals 1 plus 3n minus 8n. And again, these are all equations that you've done in the past 2 weeks. They are in your lessons, whether it be in do-nows or homework or exit tickets. Okay, so we have variables on both sides. I have n's here and n's here. I'm going to cover one side and focus on one side at a time to simplify all the way. How do I simplify? I need to use distributive property and combine like terms first. Okay, so those are my first 2 steps. Here, you see that I can combine these 2 terms that are alike because they both have n's. So before I even go to the other side, I'm going to simplify this side. So I'm going to have negative 6n, because they're both negative, so you add, keep the sign, and then the minus 6 is still there. Over here now I have variable term and constant term, so I am done simplifying. I'm going to go to the other side. I see that I have some like terms. Also the n, notice how I circle the operation or the sign in front of it. So I have a positive 3 and a negative 8. So when I'm adding and subtracting negatives and positives, I'm going to subtract and keep the sign of the largest. So I still have a 1. 3 minus 8 would be negative 5. Okay, so now I have them both in variable term, constant term. Constant term, variable term. Okay, so from here, now you want them to be on the same side. So here is my variable term, including the negative. This is a negative 5. And this is my constants. And I can see that the constants are not on the same side and the variables are not on the same side. So this is where I'm going to switch sides, where I have variables in one and constants on the other. Okay? And it doesn't matter which side or which one you start with first. Okay? You're going to do that using inverse operations and the inverse of plus or minus only. That's the only two that you're going to use. If they're negative, you add. If they're positive, you subtract to switch sides. So I'm going to switch the 6n over here, making this a variable side. So I'll do plus 6n, which is the inverse. One side I do to the other to maintain equality. So those cancel out. I have a negative 6 here. And I have 1 and then negative 5 and positive 6. Remember, when they're different signs, you subtract and then you keep the sign of the largest, in this case, the 6. Okay, so I have my variable term. My constants are still not on the same side of the equation. So I have to keep doing this inverse operation of positive and negative. So here, because my variable is already here, then I'm going to have to move the 1 over here, so this is the constant side. So the 1, if it doesn't have anything in front, that means that it's a positive, so the inverse would be minus. So I have 1n equals, and then these two are negative, so when I'm adding the same sign, I add them and keep the sign, so that would be negative 7. Divided by 1, n equals negative 7. Okay, so that would be my problem. For this one, my answer. If I want to check the answer, I would substitute the negative 7 back to the original equation to make sure that it worked. So I would do negative 4 right here. Instead of the n, I would put negative 7. I'm sorry, it was minus 2, negative 7, 1 plus 3, negative 7, minus 8 times negative 7. So you would undo all of that. Every time you see an n, you would substitute in the negative 7 and then work it out. Okay, for time purposes, I'm going to go to the next equation. Okay, the next equation would be, we're going to do a more complicated one with distributive property. So I'll do negative 8 minus 3, 8x minus 7 equals negative 38 minus 7x. Okay, this is one of the ones that we did in the problem sets for lesson 4. Okay, so over here, again, I'm going to do one side at a time so I don't get confused. I will start crossing things out until I finish. Here I see that these things are being subtracted. However, the negative 3 has to be multiplied by whatever is in this parentheses. So according to order of operations, I cannot subtract or add first before I multiply. So I must multiply first. So distributive property and combined like terms are always first if you have like a jumble of things. So here I'm going to distribute the negative 3. So I circle it. That negative 8, nothing happens to it. It's not part of the multiplication, so I just bring it down. So I say negative 3 times 8x. I'm multiplying these two. Okay? This is like saying times. So negative 3 times positive 8. This is negative. This is positive. I know I'm going to get a negative. Negative times a positive is a negative. It's going to be negative 24x. Okay? And then I will have the same thing. Now I'm going to multiply the other. So negative 3 times negative 7. Okay? So now this is a negative, and this is also a negative. Negative times a negative is a positive. So negative 3 times negative 7 would be positive 21. Okay? On this side, I'm not ready to to that side yet because this is not simplified all the way. I have to now combine like terms. So the terms I would combine here, that those are more x terms, but there are constant terms that I can combine, these two. So I'll have the negative 24x. When I add these together, right, this is positive and this is negative. Now I'm adding them, okay? So now you would subtract because this one's a positive and this is a negative. So when you have different signs, you subtract and keep the sign of the largest. From 21 and negative 8, 21 is larger, so I know it's going to be a positive, and it'll be 13. Okay? Now that I have a variable term and a constant term and nothing else, now this is already simplified. I can move to the other side. The other side, you notice that I have a constant term and a variable term already. I don't have to do any simplification, so I'll just move it down. Okay, now I'm at that stage where I have a variable term on each side and a constant term on each side. So now I'm ready to do inverse operations that are plus or minus only, to move them around so that I have the variables on one side and the constants on the other. So in this case, I'm going to decide to move the 24x over here. So I'll do the inverse, which is plus 24x. And I'm left with 13 equals negative 38. And then I have to subtract these two. So 24 and negative 7 are different. Are going to be different signs, so I have to subtract them, okay? So 24 minus 7 would be 13. Oh, I'm sorry, not 13. 17, my bad, sorry. 17. Apologize for that. Okay, now I know it's going to be positive because the 24 is larger, so plus 17. Okay, now that I have that, I have my variable term here and my constant term. So now I have to move the constant over here. So plus 38, plus 38. Remember, I'm doing inverse, positive or negative only. So 17x equals 51, okay? And then my final would be to divide by 17. So x equals 3. And that would be my answer, okay? The last problem I'm going to do is I'm going to go over the triangle problem we did today in class, okay? So over here, we have several things. The first thing I notice, like I told you in class, is that there are angles in a triangle. So that tells me that the sum, or when I add them together, is 180 degrees. Measure of angle A is twice the measure of C. Okay, so that's the first piece of information. Second piece, measure B is 2 less than 4 times the measure of C. Remember, when I see that, I have to switch them around. So I have to put 4 times the measure of C. So 4 times angle C, okay, is going to be minus 2, okay? So 4 times the measure of C is 2 less, right? So minus 2. That would be angle B. Okay, angle B is 4 times C minus 2. And then it's assign all the measurements of the angles, okay? So I gotta figure out which one of these I'm gonna name the X. Okay, here they keep mentioning, if we notice over here, I am here multiplying by C, and here I'm also multiplying by C. So maybe I'll make angle C, since I already have angle A, angle B. I don't know what angle C is. So I'm going to make angle C the X. If I do that, when I say angle A would be equal twice the angle C. So now I can put it as 2x. So that's angle A. angle B is 4 times the measurement of C. So 4x and then minus 2. Okay? So that would be angle B. And then finally angle C, I already said it was x. The other thing I know is that when I add them all together, it is 180. So when I add angle A plus angle B plus angle C, it's 180. In other words, angle A, it's 2x, plus angle B is 4x minus 2, angle C is x. Okay? From there, I combine the like terms. This is a 1, right? And I get 7x minus 2 equals 180. I do inverse operations, cancel the 2, divided by 7, and we get x equals 26. When I read the problem, it said to find the measurement of each of the angles. So your answer should be angle A is, angle B is, and angle C is, or measures, right? So right now I have what x equals, and I notice that x is the C. So I know the C is 26 degrees. Now I need to find A and B. So A is 2 times x, and I already know x. So then that means 2 times 26. So that will be 52. So now I know that angle A is 52 degrees. Okay? Angle B is 4x minus 2, and I already know what x is. So 4 times 26 minus 2. Okay? So that will be 104 minus 2, and that equals 102. So now I know that angle B is 102 degrees. When you add them all together to check your answer, plus 26, you'll notice that you get 180, so it checks. Okay, and that will be your answer. Okay, so here the difficult one was this one, the angle B, because you have to remember when you see less than, it's the same thing as subtracted from. So 2 subtracted from 4 times the measure of C. So that one goes first, and then that one. So you kind of switch them around. Okay? And then just deciding what the x would be. Once you write it out, it looked like C would be the easiest one to label x, since both will be multiplied by it. Alright, well that's your review for your quiz. I hope you study the rest of the notes. The only one that I wanted to add, sorry before we go, is this one. So here I'm going to do distributive property. So it will be 6x, 3 times 9 is 27, minus 2x plus 1. I can combine the like terms, so 4x, okay, and then combine these like terms, so plus 28. Now I'm ready to move to the other side. The other side would be 4x, and 4 times 6 is 24. Okay? When I'm at that stage, I notice, okay, I have a variable, and then here I notice, oh wow, they're the same variable. But these are different. The constants are different. Okay? When the variable is the same, like I have positive 4x and positive 4x, those cancel out, right? When you do minus 4x, you zero out the x, you have nothing left. Now you see that the constants are different, so you know that there's going to be no solution. You can prove it by bringing these down and know that this is false. So when you get a false statement, this is a contradiction, a no solution, or an empty set. Okay? So remember those special cases as well. Okay, now we can end the video for the review, and good luck tomorrow.